Hey everybody, it's First Warn Storm Team Chief Meteorologist Brad Petrovich. Happy Friday and happy May. I can't believe May is already here. It's May 1st, 2020. Weather school continues today. We're going to do something a little different today because one of the things we would normally be doing this time of year is doing a lot of career days and doing a lot of school visits where we would talk about why and how we got into meteorology. So today, the entire First Warn Storm Team is going to tell you a little bit about how we got into profession of being a forecaster or meteorologist and kind of the background, and everybody's going to do it. I'm going to go first. I'm going to do mine live, and we've got some recorded segments from Larry, Aisha, and Chris. But let me start with me first. So I love telling this story because I wanted to be a meteorologist since I was 6 years old. I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and we had one of those split level houses. And in the late 70s, early 80s, I'm giving my age away, we had a bunch of blizzards. And we had this one blizzard I remember specifically where the snow had drifted over our driveway and our front door, and we couldn't open our front door. And my dad actually had to climb out the window or go through the garage, but he had to go out and like shovel out the front door, basically build a tunnel. And I remember going out as a 6-year-old kid and seeing these 6-foot snowdrifts. I'm 6'3" now. And I see these giant snowdrifts, and I was just awestruck. I knew from that moment on, I wanted to know how, what, and why this crazy stuff happened. It was just fascinating to me. So really, that was like the light bulb moment. And ever since then, every time there was a severe thunderstorm, a blizzard, any kind of weird weather, I wanted to go outside and stare at the sky. In fact, every science report, book report, science fair project, anything I could do on weather in school, I did. And in fact, even when I got to college, I had to take a poli-sci class, which is political science. And I ended up having to do a 25-page term paper on a topic. And I picked how weather impacted the presidential voter turnout for the United States. I've always had this fascination, but I never in a million years wanted to be on TV because when I grew up, most of the people you saw on TV, like myself, weren't meteorologists. They were just news people reading the forecast. And unfortunately, we got, our field got a bad rap because a lot of people just didn't know anything about the science. They were just weather readers or presenters. But that changed in really the late 80s and 90s as technology started to ramp up. And that's kind of how I got into TV because I loved meteorology and my degree was in atmospheric science. But I also like technology. So when I graduated from Ohio State with my Bachelor of Science degree in atmospheric science, somebody said, hey, you should do an internship at a TV station because at the time I thought I'd go to grad school, chase tornadoes, do all the things I envisioned doing scientifically. There were a lot of jobs drying up at that point. We didn't have a lot of openings in the government jobs. So I thought I'm going back to school or I'm doing something else. So I did an internship at a TV station. I got to this TV station, blown away by the technology. They had their own Doppler radar, all this weather equipment, all these computers. And I dove right in head first and knew how to do all this stuff. So I was building graphics and just really embracing the technology. And so much so that the news director was like, who's doing all this stuff? And the chief meteorologist at the time who I was interning, I said, hey, our intern Brad is doing this. And she says, would you want a job? And I said, doing what? Being a weather producer, she said. And I said, I didn't know what that was. But it basically meant I did the forecast, built the graphics, did everything behind the scenes except for being in front of the camera. And I thought that was great. I would even storm chase for the station. I did that for about 6 months while I was finishing up school. And while I was doing that, I had my resume online and I got a call from a station in Dayton, Ohio, asking me to be on TV, do their morning weather. And I had never done anything on TV except for practice at the station I was working at the time. And so I made a resume tape of me doing the weather with my one suit that I had. It wasn't even a suit, it was a sport jacket and pants. And I sent it over there and I got a job. I started doing mornings in Dayton, Ohio at NBC 22, which was WKEF at the time. It's changed affiliates and call signs, but that was my first job. And it just like kind of took off from there, snowballed. People kind of liked the fact that I was a geek, weather geek on camera, that I enjoyed what I did. And I got a job offer to go to Traverse City, Michigan to be a chief meteorologist at a Fox startup there. Spent a year up in Michigan where, it snows 6 months out of the year. It was crazy. It was really beautiful living up there. And then I had this great opportunity to go work in New Orleans at WWL, our sister station. Not in a million years did I think I'd go to New Orleans, but it was such a good station and such a great offer that I accepted the job, spent 4 years down there and quickly realized I missed seasons. As much as hurricane season was fascinating to me, I missed fall, spring, summer. I missed all the seasons. And I always knew I wanted to come to the Carolinas at some point because I had traveled here so much as a kid. And when the job came open at our sister station, now 17 years ago, I applied immediately because to me, the Carolinas are just an amazing place to live. We get 4 distinct seasons pretty much every year, sometimes a little bit less, a little bit more, but pretty much 4 distinct seasons, 2 hours of the mountains, 3 hours of the beach. It's heaven. For meteorologists, this is basically the best place to be because you get a little bit of everything. And that's the thing. As a meteorologist, people always ask, would you want to work in San Diego or Palm Springs where the weather's nice on them? No, I actually like the challenge. I love weather. I always have. I've been lucky enough to take a passion and a hobby that a lot of people have and turn it into a career. So I genuinely love what I do, and I love the science of meteorology. And the great thing about being on TV that I never realized until I got into it as a scientist was I get to share that passion of science and weather with people. So doing stuff like this, going to schools, doing some of these things I do on social media, that's what makes being on TV so awesome. Not the, being in front of the camera. I don't care about any of that stuff. The TV side of it is kind of overblown and people like kind of overrated, if you will. The really cool part about it is that you get to share your science and your passion with other people. So that's my story. Let's hear about everybody else on the First Warn Storm team because everyone's got a unique background of how we got into this. And we're going to start with Larry Sprinkle, who has amazing stories. Larry is one of the best storytellers I've ever met. Amazing person. And his story of how he got into this is pretty amazing. So Larry, here you go.
Hi, this is Larry Sprinkle. I think I really got interested in weather when I used to be terrified of thunderstorms, so frightened by them back when I was probably 5 or 6 years old. And then when I was about 7, at the ripe old age of 7, I became so fascinated with storms, I would go out in the middle of storms and get in serious trouble for doing that and have to be sent to my room and then have to listen to the radio and things like that. But I really, back in those days, enjoyed watching the Shell Weatherman on Channel 12 television up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. The Shell Weatherman who did his weather from atop the Shell Weather Tower in this big building that was at the top of it. And the illusion was that the weatherman climbed up a ladder to the tower, and when he got to the top, he could stand there and do his weather. Well, I had a chance when I was 10 years old to go to the TV station and meet the Shell Weatherman, Brian McMurray. And I'll never forget when I met him, he said, "How old are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm 10 years old." And he said, "You know what, son? If you're interested in this and you want to do this, well, you stay in school and you read and you learn, and one day you can have a job like me." Well, let me show you. This is an actual picture right here of the Shell Weather Tower, and the camera would pan up the tower and cut away to the little building, and then boom, there he is. Brian McMurray would stand there with his weather pointer, as they used back in those days. He could point to things like the sky conditions, the high, the low, the wind speed, the wind direction. So that was the Shell Weatherman. I was just so fascinated with it, and I'll never forget, and this is the actual picture that I drew when I came back home, the camera guys, and there he is, there's the weatherman. Anyway, you can see I am not an artist, but if it wasn't for the Shell Weatherman up in Winston-Salem at Channel 12, I probably wouldn't have the job I have today. That's why I'm here every morning, dark and early at 4:30 on WCNC TV.
I wanted to be a meteorologist because I grew up obsessed with thunderstorms and hurricanes. I grew up in southeastern Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia to be exact. And, we really paid attention to hurricane season in my family because it was a time, just thinking back over my childhood, we had some really, really intense storms some seasons, but it was those same storms that may have put fear and other people that really drove my curiosity. During the summertime, we have those typical pop-up thunderstorms. I was so curious as to why they formed, where they came from, what created lightning. I just had so many questions at such a young age when it came to storms and hurricanes. Now, my brother and sister, they were terrified. They were terrified of any storms at all. It didn't care what kind of storms. They were terrified. But for me, I was just so curious as to why these storms even formed and where they came from. So it was at 7 years old that I decided that I wanted to be a meteorologist. I couldn't spell it, but I knew that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be the people on television that researched these storms and that forecast these storms and that kept people safe. And so when I got older into high school, I really got serious about the path that I needed to take to become a meteorologist. I had some really great teachers in my life who really helped me to put me on the right track. And they connected me with some really talented meteorologists in the area who were able to advise me on the path that I should go and to the schools to look into. However, I did not want to leave home. So I was one of those students, those kids, those teenagers. I just didn't want to leave home to go to college. So I decided to stay in Norfolk, and I went to Norfolk State University, the best decision that I could have ever made. I majored in mass communications and broadcasting. And then when I left Norfolk State University, I went to Mississippi State University in Starkville, Mississippi, and I got another bachelor's degree in geosciences and meteorology. So I was able to take what I learned at Norfolk State University, all about TV, and take what I learned at Mississippi State University, all about weather and meteorology, and combine those two things. And to this day, I am just still cannot believe that I'm living my childhood dream. It has been such an honor. I'm so grateful, so blessed to be able to still 8 years later love what I do for a living. I truly, truly do. And, you know, weather doesn't care what you look like. It doesn't care about your status. It affects everybody. And it certainly has kept me humble. It has kept me a forever student. I'm always learning, and I don't ever want to stop learning when it comes to weather. I also think as my life has progressed and as I've gotten older and, you know, obviously in this career for some time now, I feel like going into weather, I started with just a passion for storms and hurricanes, but it has evolved. You know, when I was growing up watching the Weather Channel on Saturday mornings, I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me doing what I do. So I got discouraged along the way. I didn't think I could do it because I didn't see a lot of people who looked like me. So now it has kind of become my why as well. I want to encourage all girls, but especially young girls who look like me, that they can do this. And hopefully they see me and they're inspired. So I am so grateful to just be here in this community, serving this community, because this is what I've wanted to do since I was 7 years old. And I couldn't thank you enough for allowing me to come into your homes and to, you know, inform you about the weather, keep you safe from dangerous weather. And I just pray for more prosperous years ahead.
So why did I want to become a meteorologist? Well, first off, it's based on passion. When we love something in life, most of the time you remember the first time you really liked that, or the first time that came to your attention. When you love something, most likely you're passionate about it. And that's the way I feel about the weather. And we have to go way back to when I was 6 years old to when I first wanted to do what I am doing today. So we lived out in Montana, the Great Plains, where there's big rolling thunderstorms, huge ones, larger hail than we typically see here in the Carolinas. So my interest was already piqued. That day, that I remember that I wanted to be a meteorologist, I had actually got my first library card. So that was already a big, whoa, look at this, I have access to all these books. But on the way home, we were driving home. My dad was driving. It was one of those big, long, brown, old 1970 Cadillac Eldorado. If you know cars, you know what I'm talking about. But the car doesn't matter. Anyways, when we were getting home, I could see off in the distance this monstrous storm. And through education, this was a supercell. It didn't produce any tornadoes during this point. But we got home, and we had some of those old school garage doors. So my dad had to manually go out and open up the doors. And I just remember the wind blowing in and the rain as the car door was open. My dad fighting the wind, trying to hunker it down, getting in the car, driving in. And my eyes were just filled with wonder. And the best thing is the next day I took that library card, and the first book I ever took out of the library was called Thunderstorms for kids. So the passion started early. After that, when I was 8 years old, I remember tracking the hurricanes as they were moving up the coast. And I have to say that passion hasn't wavered. And the best advice I can give to somebody is, if you're going to choose a career, and you can for the rest of your life, make sure you're passionate about it, because passion often leads to fun. If you're passionate about it, you want to learn more, you want to grow more in that field. So the more passion that you can have with anything, not even just a career, I think the more fun that you're going to have with it. And I can say that I'm very lucky to be where I am today, working with this amazing group of meteorologists. But working with this group, and to this day, I can tell you I've never stopped learning. And that's my best advice for you. Never stop learning. And I try to do this every day. It doesn't always work out. But if you can end the day saying, I learned one thing, that's a pretty good day. So try to live by that sentiment. Try to live with passion. May it be a career that you're going towards. Maybe you want to be a meteorologist. Or if you just have a passion in writing, in reading, anything, just have fun with it. Yet, I'm meteorologist Chris Mulcahy. Thank you so much for listening to my story, and make it a great day, everyone.
Yeah, great. I love everybody's story. And one thing you see common with all of us is we kind of started at an early age. It doesn't mean it always happens that way. I know a lot of people that got into this field late, but it seems to be something very unique about weather. It struck a lot of us at a very early age. I love the different ways that we all talked about how we got into it. And you saw Aisha hit on this, and Chris, and even Larry. Education is really important. And the one thing I will tell you before I wrap up today's weather school is, like, don't be discouraged if there's one hard part about this. Every one of us have had something hard that we had to get through to get to this. For instance, I'm amazed. I did not like math, or I was not good at math in middle school because I just didn't understand it as well as I do now, or even see the purpose of it. And as I got to high school, I started realizing math was really important for meteorology. So much so that I took AP calculus. And I took geometry and trigonometry so I could get into Penn State at the time, which is where I thought I was going to go. I needed 2 math courses. And when I figured out that math would help me figure out what the weather was going to be, all of a sudden I was like, oh, math is awesome. So you're going to have struggles. There's going to be courses that are going to be tough. But if you love it and you have a passion, like Chris, Aisha, Larry, and I all said, you'll get through it. So I hope that kind of shares a little bit about how we got into weather, why we love meteorology, because it's a common question we get when we do career days. We always like to tell people, that's how it happened. And as Chris ended there, which was great, it doesn't matter what you do. If your passion is anything, writing, art, sports, it doesn't matter. If you want to make it a career, you got to work hard at it. Nobody ever gets to where they are through easy street. So it's going to take hard work. But the great thing about passion, it makes you want to do that hard work, so you get through it. So hope that was a great little conversation today about how we got into weather. We will be back on Monday with Weather School once again at 1 o'clock. And again, if you miss any of these, remember, they're always available on our YouTube channel, WCNC's YouTube page. We've got a whole playlist of all our weather schools. They go back to early March, which I can't believe we're in May now. So almost 2 months worth of weather schools are sitting on our YouTube page. Have a great day, and we'll see you on Monday.